If you die before you die, then you won't die when you die. This quote, engraved at the entrance to St. Paul's Monastery, holds the secret key to spiritual immortality. Let's decipher it together. Welcome to Agrippa's Diary, the gathering place for modern mystics. The ancient mysteries refer to a broad range of spiritual and religious teachings that were practiced by various secret societies and initiatory orders throughout antiquity. These traditions were often shrouded in secrecy, with their true nature and purpose hidden from the uninitiated. While there were numerous ancient mystery schools, some of the most well-known include the Eleusinian mysteries, the Orphic mysteries, and the Mithraic mysteries. At the core of these ancient teachings was the pursuit of personal transformation and the attainment of hidden knowledge or gnosis. The mysteries were designed to lead the initiate through a series of esoteric teachings and ritual experiences, with the ultimate goal of providing profound insight into the nature of existence and the divine. This journey often involved a symbolic death and rebirth, symbolizing the transformation of the individual's soul. The ancient mysteries were deeply rooted in myth and symbolism, using powerful narratives to impart their teachings. The Eleusinian mysteries. The Eleusinian mysteries were deeply rooted in the myth of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture and fertility, and her daughter Persephone, the goddess of the underworld and vegetation. According to the myth, Hades, the god of the underworld, abducted Persephone, causing Demeter to search for her relentlessly. During this time, the earth became barren, and the gods intervened to reunite the two. As a compromise, Persephone would spend part of the year with Hades and the other part with her mother. This myth symbolized the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, as well as the changing seasons.
So you're too busy to read the Bible. Well, what if your Bible reads itself to you? Well, that's exactly what this app will do. It gives you the option of reading the Bible or listening to the Bible when you're online or offline. It even has quizzes that will help deepen your knowledge of the scriptures, so you can grow in your relationship with God. Check out the app today.
Death and rebirth, as well as the changing seasons. The initiation process. The initiation process of the Eleusinian mysteries was divided into two parts, the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries. The lesser mysteries were held in the spring and served as an introduction to the teachings and rites of Eleusis. They were also a time of purification and preparation for the greater mysteries, which took place in the fall. During the greater mysteries, the initiates, known as maistai, participated in a series of sacred rites and ceremonies that took place over several days. These included a procession from Athens to Eleusis, a ritual bath in the sea, the sacrifice of a pig.
I'm grateful. I had a wonderful life. I had a wonderful family, so I cannot regret anything that happened. If anything, in that period maybe of having a hard time and difficulties,
great places have become killing fields.
it's time to act.
Thing that Alan Bloom points out, how our society is decaying and coming apart because of our denial of absolutes. And he's not dealing from a theological basis, at least not evidently in his book. But it's interesting, the closing of the American Mind. Must reading if you have the sensitivity in this area. Woe unto them who call evil good and good evil. Boy, does that characterize our value system. Darkness for light, for darkness, bitter for sweet, sweet for bitter.
Who serves in World War I, he wants to become an American citizen, and he basically says, well, look, under the law, I'm an Aryan because I came from North India.
Wrote this world's largest cave in Halkia. There's one other important thing about Hung's trip. In that group of 8 tourists.
Terry, when I reflect on my life,
Great places have become killing fields.
it's time to act.
It's time to make our voices heard, not as Democrats or as Republicans, but as friends, as neighbors, as parents, as fellow Americans. And I'm being deadly earnest when I say that.
The president delivered remarks in front of a display with 21 candles, one for each victim. Biden says since the shooting at Uvalde last year, our country has experienced 650 mass shootings. Stocks finished modestly lower on Wall Street today as worries about the economy higher. Some of the worst losses came from companies that actually gave forecasts that fell short of expectations. The Dow down 0.7%. This is NPR. From WEGS News, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, Department of Economic and Community Development Commissioner Stuart McWhorter, and then just because she would get so upset at herself and walk into the dugout like mad, the coach would. Who was that? I want you to pay particular. Let's find our first scripture here about prophecy, and point number one that we. Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. From a comics reader perspective, it's basically.
Here's McHenry talking about Biden's selection.
He sent warriors up here on behalf of the.
6 minutes and 38 seconds. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. So, here it is Thursday, and a week from today, if the Congress does not get some kind of agreement, we will go into default, right? First time in American history that the United States will not be able to pay its bills. And it'd be like us defaulting on our credit. And that's exactly what this is. And it's interesting that the last time the United States did not have any debt was under Bill Clinton. You know, he did more to destroy the social safety net, and he just cut the legs out of every poor person there was. And that kind of gave us the American and the homeless, and not to say that he was the first, good old Ronald Reagan, he did a similar thing. And it's an interesting time and space. That's all I can say. It's an interesting time and space. It's not like anything different, but it's all these things coming together. And yesterday I was riding through the big valley on the other side of the mountain range from where I live. And it's, big farmlands in the center. And it used to be the center of vegetables and beans in America. Now all it is cows, right? And that's because all the rich people come and move here. And if they have more than 12 cows on their property, they can basically not to pay any taxes, because there's a big incentive for meat in this country. And so if you're raising cows, you get a lot of tax write-offs. So everybody, all those rich people, all the cockroaches coming from California and Texas and Florida, they got a lot of money. They buy 100 acres and they saw off about 50 of it and put about 20 cows on it, and they don't have to pay any taxes. So it's quite interesting where we're at, and good old Warren Buffett had this axiom: buy, borrow, die. And that's basically what our country is going through. And these wars, we've had never-ending wars, basically, since World War I. Well, since the Spanish American. Well, let's say since the Civil War. Civil War, then we decimated the Indians. We had the Indian Wars, then we had the Mexican War, then we had the Spanish American War, then we had Korea, and Vietnam, we had Afghanistan, and then Iraq, and many, many, many other wars in between. We went to that little island in the Caribbean. We went to Panama. We went to a lot of places and had little wars, right? Then we also had like hidden wars, right? And then we had drug wars, right? And then we had population wars. So or what is it good for? Making money, you know. And Eisenhower, just hours before, while he was still president, just when Jack was putting his tux on to go in front of the Capitol and get sworn in, Eisenhower came on TV and gave his military-industrial complex speech, right? And so, you know, that's kind of where it is, you know. And, you know, the Cambodian War, right? I mean, the Vietnam War wasn't between 1964 and 1972, no, because it kept going on until the 80s, because that war was about drugs, about heroin, right? It was about oil, and it was about tourism and other things of that nature. So, you know, do, 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 do.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. It's reached throughout the state, and it's now the largest provider of care in many places. For example, because it's going to keep me and my kids from doing things that they love and accomplish things that they should be accomplished. To change your community. It changed us a lot. I was with, but some of them.
New cars appears to have worked, at least in the case of Ford. Ford CEO Jim Farley saying today the company will be reversing a decision to do away with the ban in its new vehicles amid concerns about keeping emergency alert options in place. Ford removed AM radio from its electric-powered Mustang Mach-E models and F-150 Lightning pickups. The data showed less than 5% of users listened to it. Electrical interference and reducing costs also played a role. Stocks lost ground on Wall Street today. The Dow dropped 230.
To maybe give us a little more time and remember that you bought for your classroom, like from outside view, trusting survivors into grief and uncertainty. Who's going to come back?
Who could be in danger? Here, Peralta, NPR News, Mexico City. High-profile campaign from a bipartisan group of lawmakers to keep AM radio in new cars appears to have worked.
Friends that I teach with and some of the kids, not all of the kids, some of them, kids that are now having roles.
F-150 Lightning pickups. The data showed less than 5% of users listened to it. Electrical interference and reducing costs also played a role. Stocks lost ground on Wall Street today. The Dow dropped 231 points. The Nasdaq fell 160 points. The S&P was down 47 points. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Jarl and Pamela Moe. Focus. This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Juana Summers. This week marks the end of the school year in Uvalde, Texas, and tomorrow marks 1 year since the deadly mass shooting that changed the community forever. A gunman killed 19 students and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School, devastating families and thrusting survivors into grief and uncertainty. So I wasn't sure I was going to come back as a teacher. That's Nicole Ogburn, who helped her students escape Robb Elementary through a bullet-shattered window. She knew some of the children who were killed, and she was very close with the teachers killed as well, Irma Garcia and Eva Mireles. She ultimately did decide to return as a teacher at a repurposed school campus newly dubbed Uvalde Elementary. I spoke with her in her classroom last August, a week before school year began. The shirts was is I usually look for QT stuff for my classroom. My first thing was safety stuff for my classroom. I spoke with Nicole Ogburn again today as she reflected on how she, her students, and her colleagues have gotten through this year. Nicole, I've been thinking about you and your students a lot over the course of this year. How are you doing? I'm doing okay. It's been a roller coaster this year of ups and downs. There's good days, and seems like sometimes there's a lot more bad days. for myself and my other friends that I teach with, and some of the kids, not all of the kids, but some of them.
What's made it hard for some of the kids that are in your classroom?
Having to start back up with like the drills, lockdown, secure. We had hazard drills this year, and sometimes those kids just, that's a trigger for them. And then, of course, we did have a couple of actual, not lockdowns, luckily, but secure in place because of chases that would happen through town. And those really caught the kids off guard.
How did you help people stay calm in those moments?
It was hard because I was trying to keep myself calm a couple of times, but, just kept reassuring them we're safer than we've ever been.
One of the other things you also told us when we were in your classroom in August was about some of the new items that you brought for your classroom, like curtains to block the windows from outside view, a tool to help block the door in case of some sort of an intrusion or danger.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a moment this year where you felt like you needed to use those tools?
We did have a curtain on the door, the window to the door that comes into my classroom. And I used it a couple of times with the secure drills just because I didn't want the kids to see like something like that kind of made them a little more anxious. But what went through my mind this year a lot was, okay, even though I have these things, what can I use to like bear even like more, like push up against the door? A lot of that stuff went through my head all year long. Okay, if this happens or if that happens, what can we do just to maybe give us a little more time if something was to happen?
It's now been a year. What is Uvalde like now? How did the shooting and everything that's happened since, how did it change your community?
It changed us a lot. I was born and raised here, and I always thought we were a pretty tight-knit community. Then all of a sudden it just kind of, things happened. And there was lots of controversy in town. And in my mind, I'm like, something positive has to come out of this, something.
When you talk about wanting something positive to come from this horrific tragedy, do you have an idea of what that might look like for you?
I'm not sure what it looks like. I just think, like I want the children and I want Eva and Irma to be honored in a way that would make them proud. And I just want them to be honored and remembered for the good things and not remembered just for being like a mass shooting victim.
Since the shooting that day, there have unfortunately been countless more at outlet malls, banks, birthday parties, other schools, and it's heartbreaking. But how do you handle that? What is it like for you hearing reports of more shootings across this country, more people who lose their lives and have their communities torn apart?
It's almost like you relive it every time another one happens. And I feel anxious. I feel angry at times, like, why is this still happening? And that's sad that we can't just go somewhere publicly and be safe because you never know what might happen.
I have to imagine that for a lot of teachers and school staff and even kids who went back into schools just like you did, that they spend a lot of time thinking and worrying about a tragedy like this happening to them. What would you say to them, people, kind of violence coming to their community, to their classroom?
One of the things I've tried to say is we need to be cautious about your surroundings and everything around you, but also don't let the fear of something like this happening keep you from things that you love to do and that you enjoy to do. The one thing I've constantly told my kids, and I even have to tell myself, is
I can't live in the fear of this happening again, because it's going to keep me and my kids from doing things that they love and accomplish things that they should be accomplishing right now in life, and not let it hold you back. That's Nicole Ogburn, 4th grade teacher at Uvalde Elementary. Thank you so much for talking to us, and take care. Thank you.
People affected by long COVID have to endure more than just physical suffering. Many are also hurting economically. They've lost their jobs and rely on disability checks to.
Oh, enough of that. So, 20 minutes and 20 seconds. And what are you guys thinking? There's nobody there. No one's interested. You know, when you start talking about things of this nature, And don't you understand? Like I said, here it is Thursday, a week from today. If the Congress does not pay, up the debt limit, we're going to go into receivership. That means guys like me won't get their Social Security check. A good deal of people who are in under medical care won't get it. People who get food stamps won't eat. Police departments and jails and courts and other municipal entities like that will, they're talking about defund the cops. Well, this will be defunding the cops. Right? So, and I saw it happen. This has happened before. I mean, in the United States, it happened with New York City. New York City went bankrupt, and it was bankrupt for 20 years. And in that 20 years, it broke the system of political structures that had kept New York in a level of balance between the rich and the poor, between the worker and the owner, between the stock market and the street. So, Main Street. So, and all I had to do is look at New York City and what happened to it. And it was basically, taken over. It was always owned by the rich, but and this is what Scholastic stuff. Well, the rich go video. What are you talking about, Mr. Globaloni? What are you talking about? Why did they do it? They already know it. Well, basically, because even though they own the government, they own the land, they own the means of production, and they own the people. When Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, basically what happened was Mr. Rothschild came in and bought up us. Whenever you go around the country and you look at you're driving into the town, it says, "Welcome to the incorporated city, the incorporated village, the incorporated state, the incorporated." We are a corporation, and basically there are a number of poster boys who, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, the Warburgs, a few other families of that nature. They weren't the old wealth; they were the new wealth. They were the wealth that destroyed the old wealth, and mostly by sinking the Titanic. And because most of the old wealth, the Guggenheims, Carnegies, people like that, the Biltmores, they were on that boat. They all died. They were all didn't want the Federal Reserve to come, because that's one reason why we had the Revolutionary War. The white rich guys, landowners like Jefferson and basically Adams, basically said, "Hey, no taxation without representation," and that's what a central bank is, right? Because our Federal Reserve is a privately owned stock-held corporation. It has nothing to do with the federal government. Nobody votes on, we don't vote on who's there, who's making our economic rules. If you didn't want inflation, you don't jack up interest rates. What you do, just like we have, a Social Security Act, which, every time you get your paycheck, they take a few pennies out and stick it into your Social Security account, right? And so when you retire, you got some money instead of living on the street. That's how come I can live like a millionaire on $400 a month, right? It'll be interesting to see how well I do. Right now, if I don't go anywhere, I'll be fine because I got a lot of food and I have water and I have electricity that I manufacture myself, and it goes through and true to the rest of my existence, right? It really doesn't cost me a lot to exist. If I don't go out and around and go to restaurants like this and talk to you, I mean, if things fall apart, you're not hearing from me. So that's why I tell you guys, you go to the show, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and start taking down some of this stuff down. Put it on thumb drives, put it on, whatever medium you want to put it on, but, put it on there. And because, we started this show off with a little description of what mystery schools are and what the occult is and the esoteric. And, that guy was very good at describing that. And, it's not boogie boogie. It's not magic. Magic is just another man's technology, And I've been reading the Bible for the last year very seriously, like, 3 or 4 hours every day, right? And what I've gotten from the Bible is that it is a tool, right? And it's not an owner's manual. You're not supposed to run your life this way. No, because you read everything that Jesus says, and he's talking about how to experience life, right? And so his stories are a vehicle, just like mine are. I'm a griot here to tell you a story, right? And as I tell you the story, it puts you into a state. Every time they do a show, I energize myself and project a shamanic energetic into the World Wide Web, right? And that's the job God gave me to do in the last year or two, is to just keep doing. That's why I keep doing this, right? That's why I live like a millionaire on $400, right? Because I don't spend any money I don't have, period, right? And so I'm, and I've wired myself into things I need, like healthcare, even though our healthcare system is falling apart and just disintegrating. And that's what the COVID thing did to our, just destroyed our healthcare system. So, and it was limping along. HMOs have done more to destroy. I was involved in the medical motif, from 1969 until 1988. I was schooled, when my draft boy caught up with me. They said, well, we don't trust you with a gun. Would you like to do alternative service? Sure, sign me up. I went to the VA, and I was at Fort Hamilton, and my boss who ran the place, he was in his 70s, right? And he was a surgeon. He was an amazing man. He knew all these people. He sent me off to all of these mystery schools and esoteric healing centers and alternative healing. So I went acupuncture and herbalism, and I went to Davenport, Idaho, and studied to be an osteopath, and I learned cranial sacral, and I learned all the things that the medical model doesn't teach. You have 9 pulmonary systems, not pulmonary, pneumatic systems. We have over 100, if not 1,000, neurological systems. Because we're an electrochemical device, and all that information doesn't just go across the neurons. No, that's one system, and it's a very crass system. The system run by our biome is the more sophisticated system, and our biome is really our memory. That is the hard drive, not hard drive. Our heart is the CPU, central processing unit, the thing that holds all the memory. That is our gut, and the little cream cheese between the ears that gushy thing up there, that brain, all that is just a chip basically, because it's why is it there? Because it's connecting our eyes, our taste buds, our smell, and our hearing into a danger, Will Robinson system, right? And but what runs our body isn't the cream cheese between our ears. No. And modern medicine, which is that's the voodoo, that's the boogaloo, that's the caimans were pretty right on, because they understood that the real reason for being here was to be in conscious connection with God's co-creation of love, right? That's the first thing that a caveman did when he was in that cave. He did not start Walmarts. He started painting on the wall to express his what he was experiencing. Right? He wanted to get it down. And when I was in Australia for 3 years with Donna Ann, and we traveled, from Canberra all the way around the coastal lines up to where we got to Alice Springs, and then we came down to Ayers Rock, and then we went to the Nookumba, where the Wallamatiri were in Christmas Creek, right? And we were sent there by the government to do a ethnography on those people, because the government had let the Canadian mineral company just to come in there because they found gold, uridium, aluminum, and coal on their land in the Nookumba. And there were about 900 folk of the Wallamatiri. And these guys just, and the Wallamatiri were, just living out there on the land, and like Native Americans in the United States, but they didn't even have the graciousness of being on a reservation where they had semi-autonomous rights. Now, these guys were just out there, and there was nobody else out there, and it looked like a desert, even though it wasn't. And this company came out and gathered them all up and put 9mm to their heads and blew their brains out. And there were about 9 to 12 people who were out gathering food when this occurred, so they didn't get killed. And the guys who shot these people in the head, they didn't even bury them. They just left them where they fell and went away, because it was out in the middle of nowhere. No one's going to go out there. So 12, 15 years pass, and the Australian government is pursuing to be a host of the Olympics, and they said, "Well, I don't know, you guys are pretty up the hook." That's America saying that to them. America, the number. Nazi Germany copied the Nuremberg laws after the United States Jim Crow laws, right? And the Nazis said that the Americans were a bit too off the hook for them. They just took the ideological point of view. The third largest political party in 1934 and 5 in the United States was the American Bund, the American Nazi Party. They didn't like calling it the Nazi Party, so they called it the American Bund. Right? They had more people registered to vote in that election than any other party other than the Democrats and Republicans. The Socialists, the Labor Party, all those other parties, which were, America doesn't realize. I mean, we don't realize. Modern citizens who, are just interested in their carnal experience, doesn't realize that American politics for a good 100 years, since the War of 1812, was not a homogenous white thing of, the rich white guys that were either, Republicans or Democrats. No, it was, people of every ilk. There were about 12 other parties that would be voted in as congressmen and sometimes senators, but a lot of legislators in the state and county legislatures. And so American politics between the 1880s and 1950s was a not just this monolith. It was made up of many different flavors, right? And so that's why the government kind of worked, because people kind of had to get along. And they didn't have enough votes one way or the other um, to get their own way. And after the 50s, we became just Democrats and Republicans, and basically the corporations bought off both, because then they were neither. They were just a corporate state. They were a fascist oligarchy. And that's what we have today. And now they're wanting to take it down in a serious way. So that's why we have had, since Bill Clinton, a soap opera, and we just always have a very fine line between, even if one party or the other controls, the Senate, the Congress, and the executive, there's still this, soap opera of, what's going to happen. And now it's like razor thin. It's like two or three guys, one way or the other, and that's why we are about to experience a catastrophe. In 1929. But we were already in a depression. The world was already in a depression after World War One. It was a mess, right? But America was doing great. Everybody, dee 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 dee, boo 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 boo. And in the 70s in New York, it was just they couldn't collect the garbage. Defunding the cops, forget about it. They had 30,000 cops one day, and then 2 weeks later they had 8,000. And then for 20 years, they just had between 8,000 and 10,000 cops. And that's why New York City, you mix in crack, you mix in homeless people, you mix in, in the 80s when Reagan defunded everything, like the hospitals, and so you have 20, 30 years of that, and that's what you get with today, right? Richest country in the world. You can't feed 40% of the kids in America. It's and the Congress, well, we have to cut on food stamps. But we can spend $3 trillion on weapons. Because that allows that's it's like around here, right? When I came to this neck of the woods in the early 70s, there was nobody here. It was beautiful. It was unbelievable. Mount Mitchell actually had trees on top of it. Not anymore. Now it's bald. They have a little lodge up there where you can get a cup of coffee and stuff, or maybe lunch. And they used to have all these amazing. Ansel Adams did all these photos, and they took them down and destroyed them because they showed what Mount Mitchell looked like up until 1970. And now it's because of acid rain, and it's so tall, was like barbecued off, right? And the Blue Ridge Mountain has more cures of every disease. And what are we doing? We're like, you go to Asheville, you look at it. Asheville, that city was a herbal garden. When I was there in the early, I got there in 91, it was an herbal garden. Now they dug it all up, and put little boxy houses every square inch. You drive out of, head north on 26 out of Asheville, and there's 2 or 3 towns that are Weaverville and a few others. Weaverville, you come out of Asheville and you kind of go up 26, and Weaverville used to be all, the forests came up, and it was 17 and 19 and 21 and not 26. It was, a state road, and it wove through the mountains. And now it's an 18 lane of going up towards Johnson City. Once it gets into Madison County, it goes down to 6 lanes. And then once you get up to the divide where Tennessee is, Flag Pond, it gets down to 4 lanes. But anyway, so you're glad there. That whole thing that was forest, as I could see, has now been buzzsawed to earth, to the horizon, and every there's a boxy little house that has no more than 20 feet between houses. and then malls. At malls, boxy little houses, malls, and like traffic is mind-boggling. No matter where you go in Asheville or in that vicinity, it's not 3 in the morning. 240 is a parking lot. 40 is a parking lot. 26 a parking lot. I mean, and for what? What are they getting? I mean, when there was nobody there in the 90s, tremendous art was being created. And nothing. It's just dread. Right? And the people who come, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so nice, we're in the mountains. And there's, I-40 and I-26 go right through Asheville City. And 1 million cars drive through that city every trucks, diesel trucks, black, and it's in a bowl, so there's no air going through it. Here, at least air goes through it. But last week, there's not a cloud in the sky, but I can't see the mountain range over there. I mean, there's stuff in the air, right? God knows what it is. And my mystic friends say, oh, it's, they're trying to, basically there's this really interesting race between enlightenment and imprisonment. And it doesn't, transhumanism, all these things that they want to stick people in a box, that we're in the matrix, blah, blah, blah. Well, we are in the matrix. We don't realize we're in the matrix, not like they're going to put us in the matrix. We're in the matrix. But it's how you represent. If they're going to come to me and say, oh, wow, you're so great, you're so well, let's we're going to put you on, why we're going to make you, publish you, all your books, we want you to go on a worldwide tour, and you just have to put this little chip in your head. I said, fine, because it wouldn't matter, because my shamanic energetic state, which they cannot, my spirit, my spiritos, my connection to God's unconditional love, unbreakable, I always have God watching my back. And I'm not the decider. I decide. The only thing I decide is to serve love's co-creation. That's the thing I decide. I decide, I'm not, so I was in the corporate world. I made a lot of money. I lived that world, that desperate lawyer life of excess and hedonism for 14, 15 years. And I had to do that to understand what it was. And then I died, But then I came back and realized dying isn't, it's not the big deal. It's just a change of state, And, this body is not me, This is just my avatar in this moment, not in the past, not in the future. People read the Bible and they're, after 1 billion years, when everything's all over, you're going to go to heaven in this body. Do I want to be in this body? I'm in my spirit body at all times, right? So that's kind of, and these shows, I don't know if you've noticed, these shows are shamanic in nature. They're energetic in nature. Now, the other side of the coin is virtually everyone is. Like you look at John Boy's shows, no matter how, my God, this guy is, he's ready for the funny form. But in reality, he's like Jerry Lewis of the neurotic, Do. Let's see, Johnny Boy.
Hi. Hey. Hi. How are you? My voice is a little hoarse. How are you? Hi. I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling pretty good. So I'm going to work out with this new workout bench. Hi. How's it going? Hey. I got a new workout bench. I got Danica and my sons the same workout bench. I mailed them the same one. So I just got it because the other one got so old.
No, the old one looks just like this one. The old one he just bought last year.
It's so easy to put together. It's just already together. It's already together in the mail. You just put like one or two screws, and that's it. With just like screwing it in by hand. So that was kind of cool that it came that way.
Look at those shelves. When I had that house, those shelves were full of books that I would read.
I'm gonna try to do the most bench press dumbbell, 100-pound dumbbells that I've ever done in one set. So I'm gonna try to do the most dumbbell press that I've ever done with 100-pound dumbbells in one set. I'm gonna try to do 20 of them. I think I can do it. I'm taking it easy for about a day or day and a half from working out. I got my house really good. Okay.
So as you can see, Johnny, basically, he's stuck in a temporal loop. He's been doing that same video for the last 7 years, and now we're all stuck in our own temporal loop of sorts. But the question is, are you aware of it, and what are you doing to navigate it, right? And so that's the real story, What are you going to do to serve love's co-creation? Because when we, as a species, would become the we in me, we would be able to overcome any obstacle. And that's the amazing thing about humans, is that when we work as a group, we can do anything. Right? And we're not quite there yet. Okay. You guys stay right there. Let's see if we can handle this.
I don't feel like putting music on. Praise God, praise Jesus. I'm pulling up my pants while I'm holding the weight. This is so weird. I wasn't used to sitting down on that. I've sat down on the same workout bench for like 10 years. Or 8 years, something like that. This is cool. This is better. I like this. I think it's better. It's kind of weird. It sits, I think, a little bit lower than the other one. I don't know. Oh, it's weird. Well, I have to just get used to it. Now my shirt's like tucked in the wrong way. Maybe I won't go too crazy on this stuff. Maybe I won't go too crazy on this stuff. Hi. Hi. Hey. Wow. I think something really good it happened. I think something really good has happened, but I don't want to talk about it because it might mess it up if I talk about it. So I'm just not going to say. But I got a bad feeling when I said it might mess it up if I talk about it. Felt wrong. So I think that means it's okay to talk about it. So it should be okay to talk about it. But it's not about like looking cool in shape or anything like that. There's this guy coming over here, and he really likes the house, and he's younger than me, and I think he qualifies to buy it. He already got qualified to buy it. My mom's a real estate agent. She talked to him. It looks like he qualified to buy it already with like a VA loan or some kind of a military loan. And he wants to help people who have been to war to like get better from their PTSD. And he wants to make this a center for like where people can go to him for help to get past their PTSD problems if they've been in war. So he can talk to them about it and they can get past their traumatic things of going to war. And it's really good for this neighborhood because the people who built it, the Solonovich people, they survived World War II. They're in World War II. The parents are dead now, but their son Mishka's still alive. He's good. He's young. He says he's young, but he's like 82. When he was 78, he's still.
Anyway, let's see what time is it. 11:45. So, anybody got any thoughts you want to talk about? Oh, let's talk about somebody. Let's call somebody up. Talking about man bags. Let's try Darlene. Yeah.
Please leave your message for.
See how Miss Courtney is.
How are you?
Oh, anybody got anything to say? If not, so what do you think? Is we gonna have the big splat a week from today? You know, well, people go crazy and have rampant mass shootings everywhere, and eating each other's legs, or will it just be the same old same? Maybe. Let's see. Yeah. are, oh, yeah, let's see. Can I stick it out for another 5 minutes? So, so back in 1969, 68, no, when was it? 69, no, 70, 71, 71. 71 is when I went to Ireland under the auspices of Marion Toolin of the Lincoln Center auspices, Juilliard. And I was supposed to be studying theatre in the Irish Theatre Institute, but they were Celtic, and they were like, "What? You don't even speak Gaelic, so you got." So they sent me to Trinity to study ancient Irish culture, so I could be fit to be part of the theatre of Dublin, and but there were other theater companies there that were much more interesting. Those were the boring, basically old English dudes, right? So, but I went to Trinity, and no one knew what to do with me, so they just kind of set me into. They gave me a carol in the old library, where all the old Gaelic and Celtic and runic culture histories were, and basically I didn't have any class or anything. I was just sent in there to and I did have my one master, Archie, and so he was really interesting guy because he was all about Atlantis and the Sumerians and all the cultures before them, and that the pyramids were all over the planet and they were all energy things, and that Earth was just the backwater of it's like Tatooine, and so we went to the that's why no one comes to visit, because we're like in the backwater, and we're no big deal, and certain people, ancient aliens were somewhat interested in what we were doing, but just as a lark, and they gave us certain technologies so we could send radio waves out into the universe, and they could watch us like watching I Love Lucy. So, that's what I was doing, is studying that kind of stuff. And we went off on a gypsy wagon, which is kind of an RV driven by a horse. Modern what are called the Tinkers have little travel trailers instead of these things, and they drag them around with their little cars. And if you ever watched the movie with Brad Pitt, where he's this Irish tinker, that he captures it 100%. And so we went along to see the east coast of Ireland is like, because it's facing the North Sea. It's always dank and cold and rainy. And on the west side, it's the Gulf of Mexico hits it. It's always sunny. It's got beaches and palm trees, and it's like 30 degrees warmer, and the water is 70 degrees. So but there was nobody there. Now it's probably full of hotels and whatever. And I was talking to students, Mojo or Flojo or Joe or whatever Joe he is, and I ordained him as the minister of funds. That's all he just jerked off all the time and did drugs and was a bartender, and he was a crotchety, angst, bitter character who wanted to be a yuppie. I mean, he was a yuppie, but he couldn't, have the revenue flow. And then he ran into me, and he had like a spiritual awakening, and he would come and stay at the Deep Green, and we would meditate, and we'd look at the stars, and talk about things. And he did have this kind of right. And so I said, I'm going to ordain you as the minister of fun, right? And so he went off and really embraced that as a bartender, right? He was no longer the crappy guy, and so he did better, and he was doing pretty good. And people go, "Wow, he changed." And in essence, he didn't, because why he's a good example to follow. And why, that's me. I'm a social scientist. These are all my students are basically my lab rats. Colonel Sanders and Grandpa Cockroach and the tweakers and the slaves. I just observe them. They can be annoying. They can affect my personal space, and I can get, I can be like the old guy, get off my lawn, But no, God says, no, no, no. I sent you these morons because you need to be sharpened up. You've been out here in the woods for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's been beautiful, and it's you've been just talking to the animals, and but I have something for you to do, and that 11%. Hey there, fish. Morning, sweetheart. So, is end of times coming from a week from now? Are we? You're in a position to observe things before they happen. Is what's are we going to default next Thursday? What do you think? I know that's putting a lot on you, fish. While you're thinking about that, I'll keep up with the story here. So I basically, let's see, still money to be made. Yep, exactly. See, and she, me, I would go on and on and on about it, but she goes straight to the point. Still money to be made. I think you were right, Fish, because they will not. They've had so many. The last 40 years, they had so many points where they could have pulled the trigger on Mr. Globaloni, and they're just tiptoeing their way to it. But at some point, they'll have to, because it's, let's see, it's scare tactic. Of course, it's a scare tactic, yeah. And so, because they want us to go along with, how about CDBC? Centralized digital banking currency. Have you seen that being rolled out within your motif? I mean, we all have credit, I don't have credit cards. We all have cards instead of cash. And now a lot of people just use their phone. And so that's all of that kind of motif. But, where they're heading for, did you ever see, I forgot what the name of the movie, but it was like in the 90s. It was a Steven Spielberg film, and it had Tom Cruise, and he was a policeman, and they were rolling out this new kind of Justice Department where they had psychics, maybe in a few years. And the psychics were hooked up to mainframe computers, and so these guys could see the waves just before a crime would happen. So the police would go arrest you before you robbed the bank or shot somebody or did anything. They could pick, the psychic guys could pick it up. The computer could crunch some numbers, and they could go pick the person up. So they would arrest you before you committed the crime. So there was no crime, right? And basically, Tom is upper middle management of this tour. His boss invented this system. Boss dies, and he's kind of somewhat, he knows he's going to die. So he's kind of, and he doesn't want to go into the big link, he didn't want to be a transhuman. So he's trying to, basically, he's kvetching to Tom about, boy, I went wrong here. I've got the whole human race stuck in this box here, and I don't know what to do about it. And so I'm just going to die and let God sort it out. So anyway, so Tom gets more and more, and then all of a sudden the guy dies, and Tom kind of becomes head of everything, and in an ancillary way, meaning not politically, but I mean, he's got a lot of Jews. And so anyway, he's they're about to make this, instead of just trying it out, they're about to make it the law of the land. And since they gave him the keys to the car, he realizes, oops, there's some real deep, you know, organizational problems with this whole system. And it works fine when we're just doing a few cities, but when we put the whole country and the whole plant on, this is going to not be good. So he's trying to basically figure out how to not, you know, turn the key and turn the whole thing and lock everyone into it. So he becomes the enemy of the state. And so he's trying to run away from them. And because there's cameras everywhere, because there is no money left. You go into a store and you pick up what you want and you walk out with it. And if you're, you know, friendly to the state says fine. If not, you don't get to walk out with the goodies. So, and that was like in the 90s. Spielberg is always, you know, he is the boy that tells the story to the masses about what's going to come down the line soon, right? So Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is more a communication system. We'll hold that off as long as they can. And Bitcoin is just, and you're right, Bitcoin is just a distraction. It's really not a currency. It's just, you know, point-to-point reference of Minority Report. That's it. Boy, Fish, you were the best. Yeah. So, and that's, how come there aren't more fish in this world? I like that. You know, if there were more fish, we would then have a actual cadre that has a chat that actually has, you know, interesting things to say. Yes, it makes, and you're right. Your first statement, you know, there's still money to be made. You know, Bitcoin makes millions. It isn't a transferal system. It's making millions. That's why it's a scam, basically, right? It's like the gold dinar. You know, there's no gold in the gold dinar. So, so from your high perch, Miss Fish, what are you seeing? What's shaking in your world? I'm been a little weepy over what happened. You know, see, 1 year anniversary of that shooting in Texas, where the 19 kids, no one can pay the Bitcoin. No one can pay in Bitcoin. So it's not a currency, right? But your face will be the currency. You know, like she said, go watch the movie Minority Report. You know, so, drink water, drink water. Fish, I'm going to come visit you soon, sometime this summer. I'm going to take a little road trip and come visit you. Oh, where is? That's a good point. I'm going to call Chuckles in Chicago. Let's see. Oops, wrong device. Ooh. You stay there, Fish. Here we go.
Hello?
Yes, it's me. Am I on the same channel as I always talk to you on?
Well, the number is the same, sir.
Oh, okay. It just sounds. I think I hit the wrong button, and I'm like talking to you through, you know, being bounced off of Mars or something. You know.
Well, I am actually abroad.
Yes. Oh, you're abroad now. Oh, you're wearing a dress.
Well, yeah, I'm abroad. Well, you caught me in the wrong time, and I have to make some money. So I'm retired. You know, I need to make money.
You mean you're turning tricks? You're turning tricks.
Hey, listen, I'm in El Salvador, senor.
You're in El Salvador.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you quickly, this is really, really surprisingly nice place.
Why is it surprisingly? It's in Central
Well,
America.
I'm sure you heard.
It's in a beautiful place.
What?
I said it's in a geographically, it's an amazingly beautiful place.
Well, yes, indeed, sir. But you may not know this, but this used to be called the murder capital of the world.
Yeah, well,
it
that's
used to be
well,
called.
it was called and it was advertised, but it really was. I mean, it was because we had wars there. We had the death squads. That was a good old Reagan and George Bush, and we had the drug wars going on there, right?
Well, yes, it's all nice and dandy, but this is the home of the most notorious gang in the world, MS-13, and many of them other gangs.
Right.
So,
right.
Bamako, he came in, he opened up a giant super prison, put all those MFs in there, 65,000 of them. There's actually a few videos on that on YouTube.
Right.
We put all of them in jail. The place is now very, very livable.
Okay. So are you looking for real estate down there? You're not going to buy my deep green, or are you?
I'm not looking for real estate, sir.
Okay.
Definitely not, sir.
Okay.
This is very too. It's not my cup of tea,
Right. So is there any beach properties?
I have not been to the beach yet. I mean, the capital San Salvador. A couple of days I'm going down to the beach. So we'll check it out. But there might be some properties, and it's not a bad idea. I bet many gringos are looking for a quiet place to retire. This is a nice place.
Right. Well, there are, the real problem about trying to do that, no matter where you go, there you are. The real problem isn't your neighborhood. It's who you are. That's the real problem.
But see, I think this would be a nice place for you, man. Many other places in Central America, you could live really decent life here.
Okay. Well, we'll see. When are you
coming?
When are you coming back?
I am coming back on the 2nd or 3rd. We need to talk about our road trip.
Oh
We
yes,
need to plan something.
yes, and I have Fish here, and she's down in Music City, and I thought we'd go visit her, Nashville.
Okay, we can do that. And that, he is actually here. He's in Miami. He wants to come with us. And he, to believe it, will not contribute.
Okay, well, okay. Let's talk after you get back. What do you think? The Fish thinks the world isn't falling apart next Thursday because there's money to be made.
Oh, money? Listen, money to be made. I heard that. All right. I like that part. So listen,
yes.
Listen. Let's talk when I come back because I'm moving around. So let's
well,
talk
it
when I
sounds
come
like
back.
you're in the middle of a traffic jam. So I'll let you go.
Speaking of traffic, these guys get something serious.
Okay, handsome. Talk to you later. Okay, he's that guy's the most traveling dude I know. It's the capital of MS-13. Yep. So, yeah. 1 hour and 14 minutes and 18 seconds. And I'm wondering, should I have lunch? Maybe I think I will. Should I have lunch now? Is it lunchtime? Yeah, it's 12:05. It's lunchtime. I'm going to have lunch. Ugh. Let's see. Where is Moron Boy?
Still call himself young, and he dresses cool, and I think he's one of my best friends, Mishka, and he owns a couple of houses in the neighborhood, and he helped build this house, and other people helped build this house, and it's just, and I don't want to think about some of the other people, but so many people, but George Solanovich built this house with his wife. And some of the other people helped build it, and they're nice. it's gotten a little annoying. One of them's living in this neighborhood, and they're just like, he's okay. It's just, I yelled at him. That's why my voice is hoarse. I got really angry and yelled out that window at him. Went crazy. Heard punch in the air. I thought he wanted to cripple me before I left. I thought he wanted to give me a limp before I left. And I got really pissed off. I started yelling at him and saying, "We're gonna kill you," or something like that. But I didn't say I'd literally kill him out the window. I was yelling at trees. I wasn't talking to him, but it was pretty bad because I got the thought all of a sudden, like he wanted to give me a limp before I left. Limp? What does that have to do with anything? Got really pissed off and yelled out the window, yelled out that door. But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just crazy. And he used to yell at the trees too, because he had a job. It's a long story, but he's this guy in the neighborhood, and he's actually okay. He's actually okay, so I get along with him. He worked on this house too, like in the 70s or 80s.
Okay, enough of that. Yep, I just put in my lunch order. If you can afford it, do it. Yes. Well, it's $8. I can afford $8. That's why I eat here. It's about $8 a meal, and it's a nice meal. So, and yeah. So tomorrow's Friday, and then the big whoop-de-doo holiday. So I'm gonna try and do some readings and see how that works out. The place is still open. I was going to do it. So I'm going to have lunch. And let's see. George Friedman explains why China secretly wants Russia. It wants it? So let's see what this moron has to say.
At Avocado, we believe what's better for you is better for the planet.
China is a lifetime ally of Russia, and they will do two great things together, except give weapons to the Russians or vehicles to the Russians. The Chinese made a very bad move, which is they entered into a relationship with a country that they assumed had a much more powerful military than it did. And that means that Xi has some things to answer for, but no harm has been done yet. But China has a much deeper problem. Its economic problem resembles that of Japan in 1991. Its financial system is completely skewed. Its dependence on exports skews the entire Chinese system, especially with its largest customers, the United States, given to fits, tantrums, and what else. Okay? Dependent on the United States. The United States is deeply involved against the Russians. Doesn't absolutely need those Chinese exports. China can only go so far. They can do good, but only that far.
In an interview, George Friedman, a geopolitical analyst, discussed various issues related to China and its relationship with Russia, the United States, and Taiwan. According to him, China has made a big mistake by assuming that Russia had a more powerful military than it actually does. As a result, China has entered into a relationship with a country that may not be able to provide significant military support in the event of a conflict. This mistake could have long-term consequences for China, and it will need to answer for it. Friedman also discussed Japan's financial crisis in 1991. The economy is overly reliant on exports, which is skewing the entire economic system, especially its largest customers. The United States, in particular, has the power to set standards and influence China's economic growth. However, the United States does not need Chinese exports, and China can only go so far before facing economic challenges. Regarding the issue of Taiwan, Friedman argued that China's ability to invade and take control of the island is limited. China has only 6 or 8 amphibious transport craft, and it would need all of them to land at the same time on the same beach. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's #2 economy. My name is Tony,
Let's jump in. Okay, happy Tuesday, everybody. We have a lot to cover today. It's a rather big video, so let's just dive in. Hidden local debt is a hot topic in China these days. While we've been following this closely for years now, these last few months, it has been receiving increasingly close attention from PRC academics, financial media, and leadership. To start today's video, we will look
as Russia accidentally revealed the true scale of its casualties in Bakhmut, and they are staggering. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's May 25th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, as always, guys, you may have noticed that there's a lot of clickbait in the national security space, and that's why I launched the Strategic SITREP newsletter. This is a free weekly newsletter. You just got to sign up, and it drops the most relevant national security stories in the week right to your inbox. This is, of course, I curate them, but you can see last week's we talked about the unstable ceasefire that has been brokered in Sudan, the operations by the new Russian volunteer corps in Russia itself, and the fall of Bakhmut to Russia. And each one of these stories not only has a simple, no clickbait, no exaggeration summary, deeper dive explaining the so what of each story so you understand just how it fits into the larger and wider national security context. So if you're interested, check out the strategicsitrep.com/subscribe. Link is in the description. Okay, taking a look at the control map, the biggest changes that we've seen are actually the fact that
Want a lawn that looks like this, but your lawn looks a little bit more like this? Then you should click right here and check out True Green.
Ukraine has gone back on the move in the flanks around Bakhmut. You can see in the southern flank here, Russia has been pushed off of this forested area. Again, Russia relies heavily on these forested areas to establish defensive positions, since that's where the Ukrainian advantage in armored vehicles is minimized. And the fact is that Russia has already bolstered the flanks with considerable numbers of their remaining reserves. And so the fact that those reserve forces are also being broken out of their entrenched positions is a good sign for Ukrainian momentum. Remember, the longer a military formation remains in set defensive positions, the harder it is to break them free again. So the fact that we're seeing these positions move is a positive sign for Ukraine, even if it's not a ton of territory. You can see here in the north, again, the same thing, a defensive forest area. Russia is being pushed out, and it's going to be harder for Russia then to establish comparably solid defensive positions. Now, when we look at the news stories, we can see one of the more significant stories that's occurred recently is actually that Russia has signed a deal to deploy tactical nukes in Belarus. Now, bear in mind, tactical nukes are not strategic nuclear weapons. Strategic nuclear weapons are the big kahunas.
Why do we see a pattern of discrimination, suppression, and prejudice against Black Africans? And even that pattern lingers to this day. What's the made-up hostility the white European and Arabs felt toward Black Africans? Historically speaking, it was due to the superiority the Black Africans have had since the start of civilization. Black Africans were the richest of Angolas. That's where non-Black people, with an inferiority complex, decided to portray Black Africans as inferior. But how? Well, it was done by using their dark complexion, plump lips, and woolly hair. Yes, they felt a threat so striking that they declared Black Africans a backward, inferior race. All their struggle was to show how uncivilized Black Africans were so they could teach them how civilized people like them live. That's where the wicked journey against Black Africans started. Today, even if everyone stays silent, history speaks too loud to be avoided. But the real focus should be this question. Why do non-Blacks see Black Africans as a threat? And why does this same feeling prevail even today? Welcome to a new episode of Black Culture Diary, a channel where we talk about the people that are evidently ancestors of and superior to everyone, the Black. We scrutinize history here to bring the black culture back on the surface again. In this episode, we will debunk why black Africans were historically viewed as a threat. Let's get started.
Oh, I need some tools and some updated tools. Great, Parmesan. And if you have some
Shop today at DailyFarms.com. How's the chicken? Oh, the prawns are delicious. Oh, I have a shellfish allergy. One prawn, very good. Did I say chicken wrong?
Tired of people not listening to what you want? Yeah. The more we understand you, the better we can help.
Let's get started. The first reason why non-black felt threatened was black Africans' physical superiority. Historically and even today, black people are the strongest humans on earth. And this strength manifests itself in their physical charisma, which is hidden from nobody. Non-blacks knew if blacks were allowed to participate in their matters, they would eventually dominate what they held dear.
That's why I am a black man. That is melanin challenged.
Is our government in the possession of a crash retrieval that was made not on planet Earth?
We have a pretty good idea of where those things were taken. It's not a secret anymore that those things have been retrieved. They've been retrieved all over the world by special teams. They've been taken to the best labs.
The Ukrainian researchers said, we see these UAP under all kinds of visible conditions, a lot of the time, lots of different locations.
We also have the Webb telescope that can look at such an object from a different direction than the observatories on Earth.
The myths are consistent with oftentimes referred to as the gods.
And there's a lot more going on here, not just on this planet, but on other planets.
I think this is the arc of the covenant.
There were actually multiple arcs. History isn't what we've been taught, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
This is Gaia TV.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tim. And I was so intrigued with some of the stories and images, and I took down pages and pages of notes. However, we're going to focus maybe a little more in depth on only 6 or 7 of the topics. And one of them that I found interesting that I have not heard people speak about is the notion that it's not just reverse engineered craft that have happened around the world, but you say the truth is since the 70s, I think you said the 70s, we have actually been experimenting with and flying alien craft directly.
I think even earlier than that, actually.
Talk about this phenomenon.
My information comes from several sources. One is a former Army intelligence officer whom I've known for very many years. He's a very trusty aerospace journalist. And he indicated to me that from the mid-50s, we were developing alien technology, and we had mastered alien technology in a relatively short time. That was quite surprising, apparently. And we also have been given actual craft by certain aliens who have our best interests at heart. We have been given the technology and the craft, and we have been flying them for a very long time. That is my information. And even Gordon Cooper, the astronaut, whom I knew, we corresponded. I think we spoke on the phone probably once, but according to a friend of his who I know and trust implicitly, well, it's known that Gordon Cooper became very frustrated with the way the United Nations ignored the subject back in 1978. There was a meeting, I think, in Florida, a Florida branch of the United Nations, and he was very, very unhappy about it. And he said, "What does it take? Do I have to fly one of these craft and land it outside the United Nations building in New York?" He was actually prepared to do that.
He wasn't joking.
No. I thought it was a joke until this friend said no, he was being absolutely serious, because quite a number of the astronauts have been flying these craft. There is a real space program.
Yes.
And there is a cover space program, which is the NASA space program.
Exactly.
My information is, for example, that United States Air Force Space Command is actually in charge of the proper space program. And this information comes via Paul LaViolette, who's an excellent
Yes,
writer,
I know Paul LaViolette.
and he's a physicist.
Yes.
And he gets hold of some very...
Hey, you there. Are you talking to me? I just got all my groceries covered with the new Flex card that just came
the
out.
new Flex
What's
card.
that? Are you kidding? Did you know that any senior over 64 can get the new enhanced Flex card? Oh, really? What?
And he gets hold of some very good information, and we get on well. And I've only met him once, but he's a very bright lad.
Yes, he is. He's a good researcher.
And he said he was told that the U.S. Air Force Space Command had a base in the middle of the Pacific Ocean somewhere. And they've got a huge shuttle fleet that goes regularly to the moon and to Mars, apparently. And I don't disbelieve him.
Well, and I believe it was Neil Armstrong that said there were other spacecraft and things on the moon.
Well, that was actually picked up and recorded.
Yes, it was.
I think the Russians at least had picked it up. And so it's a matter of fact. But I had a friend called Pamela Hanford who was in MI6. I'd known her for many years. She's passed away now, which is why she allowed me to use her name for the first time, because the story actually came out in my first book, Above Top Secret, but I couldn't mention her name because of her background. But in any event, she was invited. She participated in a I would think a restricted NASA conference in 1984 in Anacapri in Italy. And her bedroom adjoined that of Neil Armstrong, and the bedroom beyond that was Buzz Aldrin. And she says she overheard. I'm quite sure she bugged their rooms.
Well, if she's MI6, likely she had the technology.
As they do. And she overheard this conversation with a German professor, Professor Schwarz, saying, come on, tell us what really happened on the moon. And he said, oh, it was dreadful. We got there and there were these spaceships and they were menacing and everything. And Pamela got all this. And so at cocktails later on that day or the next day, I forget which, she accosted Armstrong and said, oh, by the way, can you tell me more about what went on the moon? And he told her and said, yeah, we were very frightened. It was very, very disturbing. There were two large menacing.
I see menacing.
They found it menacing, and he said that was it. It was just a short hop, and that was it. And so that's the cover space program.
That's interesting.
Which is NASA, in my opinion.
There's so much contradictory information coming out about the moon in general, about the moon landing. There was even claims that there was a secondary film made of the moon landing that did not show and implicate all these other things involved.
I wouldn't be surprised,
you believe that's true.
I don't know, but it sounds likely.
Yes, I mean Stanley Kubrick was supposedly involved and was open about this, and films have been made on this. And it would be it would make sense if what they actually found up there was the other.
Yes.
To have an alternate version of that.
And Pamela also told me that the United States has been in regular communication with a planet. She didn't reveal to me what planet. She just said a planet.
So when they found these menacing-looking structures or ships on the moon, craft on the moon, did they view whatever that might be associated with as a potential threat to humanity?
That's what they felt. I don't know about that, but they certainly
touched on for a moment the fact that there are some forces that are not working in the best interest of humanity involved in these hybridization programs.
Definitely.
And so you're saying, and who knows if those were involved, if those had anything to do with that or not, but the sense that they had of danger is kind of interesting, because some of these men, we know Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell, were also very intuitive and open men as well. So I find that link interesting. And so these spacecraft have been loaned to us, so to speak, from off-planet cultures, so that we would be able to get up to speed in the technology to defend ourselves?
Yes. We actually developed the technology from probably from captured craft,
Yes.
quite early on.
Yes.
But I think things improved from the mid-1950s, according to my information, that we were actually being given some craft and technology. So we've got highly advanced craft
Yes.
that are being flown by our guys, and that's been going on in Italy, for example. Professor Stefano Breccia told me that he was aware of. He told me this 3 years ago, nearly 3 years ago. Yeah, I think it was, and he said that that there were craft that were being flown by 10 to 15 Italian Air Force pilots.
Rank of medals he's got. I cropped this picture down, but he was there with his wife. Okay, now they're.
You don't have to lie, but you do it anyway.
Your name's Alex Jones. It was probably von Daniken who pointed out that the account in the Old Testament of Ezekiel and the fiery wheels certainly sound like he was observing some sort of airborne craft. So Bloomerich says, okay, I'll point out how stupid that is. So he went back and meticulously studied the subject and sketched up the way it was described in the Bible. And lo and behold, he did a 180. He came back and he says, it sounds like a landing craft, So those are the people that I've talked to personally. Others include my friend Dave Hodges, and I don't know if y'all listen to him. He sometimes goes out on a limb, but his heart's in the right place. His claim to fame is that his father worked very closely with the paperclip Nazi scientist. And he says that some of the scientific breakthroughs that these Nazi scientists got, that they were quite open in saying that they were of extraterrestrial origin. Now that, of course, comes into play about, well, wait a minute, what the Nazis get? Well, we know the Nazis at the end of World War II had some extremely exotic and futuristic technologies. The A-10 three-stage rocket, the V-1 rocket, the V-2 rocket, the Nazi Bell, which was an energy manipulation device. It's really incredible. You can read a lot of that in my book, Rise of the Fourth Reich, which unfortunately I don't think I have a copy here, but you can still get them at a bookstore or on my website. Dave Hodges says there is the Newtonian science that our children are taught and which underlies our primitive technology. And there is the hyperdimensional physics technology that the elite control. It is the technology that the Black Ops military space program utilizes to explore the solar system. Okay? So now these are coming from these are not conspiracy theorists, and they're not science fiction writers. And speaking of clip, this is very, very important to understand how the space program came into being, because we all know that Dornberger and Werner von Braun and these guys were top Nazi rocket scientists, and after the war we brought them over here and rolled them into our military industrial complex, and they were the very beginning of our space program. In fact, those of you who are my age or older, you remember the old newsreels showing those V-2 rockets going up. In fact, when I was a kid, one of my favorite shows on TV was Rod Brown of the Rocket Rangers, and every time they went off in a rocket, it was a V-2 basically. Okay, so look how far we've come. Well, they also, by the way, brought in their mind control experts, and this is why that the American public today is being drugged down and dumbed down and manipulated unmercifully by the media and by the politicians who have learned through these mind control techniques how to manipulate large bodies. But there, at the time the Nazi scientists came over here, was that an almost equal number went into Russia. And what we now know is that they were in secret contact with each other. And I think this was by design, because the people who actually are manipulating world events, and we're talking about the bankers of Wall Street and of the city of London, who funded Hitler, created the Third Reich, and then got fearful because they were afraid that the Nazis were going to take over the world and that Germany would then control the world economy. And they didn't want that. Winston Churchill, even during the war, wrote, he said the current war is not against National Socialism, which is Nazis. He says it is against the economic power of the German people, and it must be destroyed. I don't care if a Jesuit priest is in charge. So they weren't really after Hitler, and they weren't really after the Nazis. In fact, they created National Socialism as a bloc in Europe against the spread of communism, which they also created, but it got out of hand. Once Lenin died and Stalin took over, then he was an ironclad dictator, and then he also allowed the creation of the Internationale. Okay, workers of the world unite. Well, that scared the pants off of the Western bankers and corporate owners and everything, so they said it's got to be stopped. So they created National Socialism in Germany. All right, as a bloc. And the only real difference between the Nazis and the communists, the socialist game plan was the same in both instances. The only difference is that the Russians were trying to take communism worldwide, and the Nazis were pretty much content to leave it as within the national boundaries, saying Germany is on top and we'll run everything. So this leadership, this global elite that were creating all this, and then Hitler, of course, got out of hand. They had to band up all their resources in 26 nations to go and stop Hitler, which they did. It's known as World War II. So after the war, though, they really got interested in space flight, and they didn't want the Russians to dominate space. They didn't want the United States to dominate space. They wanted to dominate space. So they kept the whole thing compartmentalized. And while America was building very sophisticated guidance systems and trajectories and computers to run our rocket program, in Russia they were building just big old heavy lift rockets that put up big payloads. And as a result, they got ahead because they were the first to put up Sputnik. They were the first to put up Laika the dog. They were the first to put a woman in space. They were first to put a man in space. And that made us fearful. We said, oh my goodness, we got to do something here. So what did? We put a crash Apollo program together, and President Kennedy pledged that we would have a man on the moon by the next decade, which would have been 1970. And so then it got to be the summer of 1969, and that deadline was getting really, really close. And somehow or another, we managed to have Apollo landing on the moon in August of 1969 and showed the world that we were dominant in space, okay? But I think away from the headlines and away from the newsreels, you've got these globalists, these financiers, and they're putting the two technologies together along with the energy manipulation. Translates into anti-gravity. So I think for all these years that we saw our tax money blowing up in smoke from Cape Canaveral over in the Okefenokee swamp, they were lifting off and heading right on off. This was the secret space program. Now, do I really believe in that? And yes, I do. And this again comes back to people I have known and spoken to, and interviewed, and got to know personally. One of them is Bill Pollock. He was a computer and keyless entry specialist. So they came to him when they wanted an entranceway that nobody could get into. And as a result, he ended up going to Area 51, to the Tonopah Test Range in Nevada, and he would go down in those deep, deep levels underground to install.
This guy you're hearing is Jim Moss, and he has passed on. He was a good friend, and people always misconstrued us, but he had a good Texan accent. I don't.
Which I'm sure was very exciting.
But we do look a lot like each other.
One thing he told me about that still
He's a brother
bugs me
from
to this
another
day
mother.
is that he worked in association with the company government for $2 billion.
Okay. I think it's time to go. Yeah. So we've been on air now for almost 2 hours. How much juice is left in the battery? Ooh, we're getting low, so we got to go. Okay, gang. It was a thrill to be with you. If you can afford it, do it. Yep. I'll catch you later.